So most of you know that I have never had a father. Um, I've got a biological one, of course, and I've met him and he's lovely, but our relationship has consisted of exchanging a few emails over the years, meeting his family, chatting a couple times. So as I've worked these last few years to find my own way as a father, I've sometimes felt confused, maybe more than sometimes, amidst the culture's clamoring images and ideas of what a father should be. Uncertain about how to embody this role that's always been a precious dream. Once, when I was a kid and asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said Superman, Santa Claus, and a father. And I've felt grateful for the fathering that I would say one of my moms especially offered alongside her mothering. So I'm thinking about a story that she liked to tell about her father, my grandfather, Grandpa Lee. It's a story about one of the callings of fatherhood, I think, which is also a calling of all parents, all who care for children and youth, but a special calling of fatherhood, I think, in some ways, the call to give children a moral framework to understand themselves and the world, to cultivate the capacity to make moral choices, to relate in moral ways. Grandpa Lee liked to collect things. I've fond memories of his magical room full of our old artifacts, of hiking along trails looking for arrowheads. One collection he had was of foreign coins, a jar filled with coins of all kinds, of brass, silver, copper, round, hexagonal, square, thick and thin, some with holes in the middle, all with intriguing images. And as my mom tells the story, he would bring this jar out on Sunday afternoons for the kids to look at and play with the coins. But one day my mom, maybe 9 years old, found that jar and decided it would be nice to have just a few of those coins for herself. I can just imagine, I know that moment. Surely he won't notice. Just a few are missing. But sure enough, the next Sunday afternoon when the jar came out, he noticed. And now I'm going to add a little analysis to the story, but I have to imagine that Grandpa Lee felt angry when he saw some coins had been taken. Angry that they were taken, angry that a child he knew and loved and trusted had betrayed that trust in even just this small way. Angry that something was wrong in the moral fabric of the relationships. A small and subtle wrongness, and yet a wrongness nonetheless. This, I think, is the essence of anger, a visceral response to the experience that something is morally off. It doesn't mean that the anger is right or justified or should be acted on, but such an important signal. So just putting a bookmark there, we'll come back to that. But Grandpa Lee, he didn't know who had taken those coins. And now something you need to know about him is he was a lawyer. So he decided to have a trial. He gathered his kids and had them testify one by one. He examined them. And by the end of the trial, it was the only conclusion he could make, that the perpetrator was my mom's little brother, my Uncle Tom. And scared and crying, Grandpa Lee took him into his room to administer some version of justice. But now another emotion changed the course of events. My mom, who had actually, in fact, taken the coins, but as the oldest sibling was a good enough liar to have gotten away with it, when she saw her little brother about to receive this unjust punishment, she was overwhelmed with remorse. Remorse, kin to guilt and shame, but a more specific, more generative emotion. Remorse, like anger, is a signal that something has run morally amok. So, fueled by remorse, acting in love of her brother, my mom screwed up her courage against her fear of the consequences, walked into the room, and confessed. I'll tell you the end of the story at the end, but I wonder before its conclusion if the universe were well ordered, well organized by your own sense of moral order, what would happen next? What would justice look like? What would love look like? And what about that word from that ancient passage of Micah? What would mercy look like? There is a certain tension that can arise as we hold love and mercy and justice together. From this tension of love and justice, we get concepts like tough love. We get ideas of rehabilitative punishment. We get ideas like hell and like prisons. So I'm trying to talk about the work of love. It's the whole point of it all. Our universalist ancestors would guide us. The whole point of it all, the work of love. The whole point of it all is to do the work of giving and receiving love, of reifying love in a cosmic sense for our early universalist ancestors, a cosmic order without hell, governed by an all-loving God. In a worldly sense for later universalists, to love the hell out of this world. To love the hell out of this world, to reify love here and now. And these universalists, they were coming out of the Christian tradition and the profound clarity in some branches of this Christian tradition of the paramount importance of love, the kind of love Jesus talked about when he said the whole of the law could be summed up, love thy neighbor as thyself. It's the kind of love that the feminist theologian Beverly Harrison wrote about in a brilliant essay from the early 80s. It's called The Power of Anger in the Work of Love. So I want to share some of her thoughts from there. She says, the command of love is not now and never was an order to feel a certain way. Nor does the command to love create the power to feel love. The command to love does not create the power to feel love, and it was never intended to do so. Action does that. Feelings deserve our respect for what they are. There are no right or wrong feelings. Moral quality is a property of acts, not feelings, and our feelings arise in action. The moral question is not what do I feel, but rather what do I do with what I feel. And she goes on to explain that a misunderstanding of this relationship of morality and feelings in Christian ethics has led to a fear of strong feeling, especially strong negative feeling. And I do think this is part of our cultural inheritance. Whether you grew up Christian or not, if you grew up in this culture, in this country, or in another country with deep Christian heritage, this fear of strong feeling, especially strong negative feeling, it's part of our inheritance. She says the importance of all this becomes clear when we stop to consider the relation of our acts of love to our anger. It's my thesis that we Christians, she says, have come very close to killing love precisely because we have understood anger to be a deadly sin. Anger is not the opposite of love. It is better understood as a feeling signal that all is not well in our relation to other persons or groups or to the world around us. Anger is a mode of connectedness to others and is always a vivid form of caring. To put the point another way, she says, anger is, and it always is, a sign of some resistance in ourselves to the moral quality of the social relations in which we are immersed. Anger is, and it always is, a sign of some resistance in ourselves to the moral quality of the social relations in which we are immersed. Anger roils through our country because there is some resistance in ourselves to the moral quality of the social relations in which we are immersed. Anger roils at the murder of George Floyd and so many others, but anger also roils through the masses rallying this weekend in Tulsa. Righteous anger, an objection to the moral quality of social relations, people of all political sensibilities angry that there is something fundamentally wrong about the structure of our society. And of course, this can be manipulated. This is why we need theological, moral frameworks for understanding our world and our anger. But the point is not to do away with it. Beverly Harrison again, where anger rises, there the energy to act is present. In anger, one's body self is engaged, and the signal comes that something is amiss in relation. To be sure, anger, no more than any other set of feelings, does not lead automatically to wise or humane action. It is part of the deeper work of ethics to help us move through all our feelings to adequate strategies of moral action. The deeper work of ethics. But we must never lose touch with the fact that all serious human moral activity, especially action for social change, takes its bearings from the rising power of human anger. Such anger is a signal that change is called for, that transformation in relation is required. And my understanding now is that neuroscience tells us this is quite literally, biologically true. The energy of aggression arising to protect our nervous systems from shutting down in the face of freezing emotions, in the face of what would cause us to not act or to sink too low. But the impulse to quell anger in the pursuit of some sort of spiritual ideal of compassion is strong. It's present in many spiritual communities, not just Christians. I confess I've devoted, I think, way too much of my life to a path of trying to push anger away rather than listen to and understand it. And there is a noble goal in this, to move past blame, to understand more deeply and compassionately the reality of a situation. It's what the Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh describes in his poem, "Please Call Me by My True Names." You might know it. It's a beautiful poem. And a few weeks ago, Ann Bailey shared with me Thich Nhat Hanh's reflection on his process of writing it. So I want to share that reflection of his before I share this poem. He says, after the Vietnam War, many people wrote to us in Plum Village. We received hundreds of letters each week from the refugee camps in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, hundreds each week. It was very painful to read them, but we had to be in contact. We tried our best to help, but the suffering was enormous, and sometimes we were discouraged. It is said that half the boat people fleeing Vietnam died in the ocean. Only half arrived at the shores of Southeast Asia. And there are many young girls, boat people, he wrote, who were raped by sea pirates. Even though the United Nations and many countries tried to help the government of Thailand prevent that kind of piracy, sea pirates continued to inflict much suffering on the refugees. One day we received a letter telling us about a young girl on a small boat who was raped by a Thai pirate. She was only 12, and she jumped into the ocean and drowned herself. And now he says, when you first learn of something like that, you get angry at the pirate. You naturally take the side of the girl. As you look more deeply, you will see it differently. If you take the side of the little girl, then it is easy. You only have to take a gun and shoot the pirate. But we can't do that. In my meditation, I saw that if I had been born in the village of the pirate and raised in the same conditions as he was, I would now be the pirate. There is a great likelihood that I would become a pirate. I can't condemn myself so easily. In my meditation, I saw that many babies are born along the Gulf of Siam, hundreds every day. And if we educators, social workers, politicians, and others do not do something about the situation, in 25 years, a number of them will become sea pirates. That is certain. If you or I were born today in those fishing villages, we might become sea pirates in 25 years. If you take a gun and shoot the pirate, you shoot all of us, because all of us are to some extent responsible for this state of affairs. After a long meditation, he says, I wrote this poem. In it, there are three people, the 12-year-old girl, the pirate, and me. Can we look at each other and recognize ourselves in each other? The title of the poem is Please Call Me by My True Names, because I have so many names. When I hear one of these names, I have to say yes to the poem. And thinking he could have written this about George Floyd, about the white police officer who murdered him. Please call me by my true names. Do not say that I'll depart tomorrow. Even today, I'm still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving, to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that are alive. I am the mayfly, metamorphosizing on the surface of the river. And I am the bird which, when spring comes, arrives in time to eat the mayfly. I'm the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant, selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands. I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please, call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please, call me by my true names, so I can wake up and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Please call me by my true names so I can wake up and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Do not refuse the anger or it would block the doorway to compassion. Do not refuse the pain or it would block the doorway to compassion. Do not refuse the grief, the remorse, or it would block the doorway to compassion. And so my mom burst into the room, told her dad that she was the one who had taken the coins. And he didn't punish her, she remembers. He told her simply, what you did was wrong, but now you're doing what's right. Thank you for telling me. A trial, anger and remorse, the pursuit of justice, and in the end, mercy. The work of love makes enough space in ourselves to hold it all. Anger and compassion, justice and mercy, what is required of you? But to act justly and love mercy and walk humbly on the earth. May it be so. I love you, and amen.